Hey guys, it's Chris from Highline Guitars, and you're watching another episode of From the Luthiers Workbench. In this episode, I'm going to tease you with a project that I am getting ready to start. And this is going to be a project that I hope to feature in a number of videos over the course of this summer. So we'll just kind of see how that works out. But what I'm doing right now is I am doing some test cuts with my CNC machine to make sure that the ideas that I have in my head are going to actually translate to a design that works. So I need to make sure that my feed and speeds are set correctly and that the bits that I'm using are going to work optimally for what I'm trying to accomplish. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to build a guitar based on my Echo double cutaway guitar design. But in recent months, the guitars that I've been building have had a contoured carved top, similar to what you would see like on a PRS double cutaway or even like a Les Paul. But what I'm going to be doing with this particular project is I'm going to carve out a relief carving in the top. So the top is actually going to be flat. Now, I've done this sort of thing a number of times before. You might remember I did it was a guitar that had a flourish design that was a relief carving on the top. I've also done some skulls. I've done gecko, python. I've done a variety of different kinds of carvings on the top. And with this particular design, what I'm going for is something along the lines of, it's going to be inspired by kind of like a mid-19th century steampunk type of look. And what I want to do is I want to carve the top so that it looks like panels have been removed to expose underlying mechanics, machinery. And what has inspired me to in terms of the look that I want is the inside, the guts of a watch. So what I've actually done is I have created a design that features the mechanics of a watch, and I have produced files which will be relief carved on my CNC machine. Now, what I've done up to this point is I've done some test carving. And this is kind of an example of what I'm talking about. And what I wanted to do was to make sure that the feed and speeds and the bits that I'm using would carve the design the way I want it to look. And based on my experience, I had a pretty good idea of how to set up the machine to do this. Now, I'm not going to really explain what I did in this episode. That's going to come later on when I'm actually building the guitar. I'll to an extent, I'll walk you through how I did it. I don't want to get too detailed because I find that when I start getting way too detailed, people start clicking out of the videos. So what I'll do is I'll give you just kind of a basic idea. And for those of you who understand CAD/CAM software and setting up toolpaths and G-codes and running a CNC machine, you have a pretty good idea of what it is I'm doing. And you may be able to figure out how you would do something similar for yourself if that was something you were interested in doing. But I'm pretty happy with how this came out. So I feel like with just maybe a couple of minor design changes, I'm going to be ready to go as far as cutting out the top for this guitar. But what I'm also going to use this test piece for is I want to test out my finish ideas. And I'm looking to do something with kind of a brushed silver, some copper, some gold, that kind of thing. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And in a minute, I'll be back to show you sort of what to expect when I actually go to build this guitar. But I'm not going to explain specifically how I do it yet. That'll, like I said, will come later as I'm actually building the guitar. So hang on, I'll be right back. Okay, well, I've got the finish test complete, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Well, I should say I'm 90% happy with how it turned out. As far as the color and the technique that I used to apply the color, that worked out perfect. And I think you'll see as when I get into that part of the episode later on this summer, how I do this, I think you'll see that it's a pretty cool way of applying metallic paints. Anyway, I had this idea after I was finished that I would fill in what I had routed out with some Solar-Res. I can't believe it's not lacquer, because I thought that'd be a great way just to fill this all up, get it level with the surface, the surrounding surface, and it would be sort of like doing an epoxy pour. Well, Solar-Res really doesn't work that way. And I tried it, and it was about maybe 50% effective. It almost did it, but not quite. So I think if I'm going to fill this in with a clear product, it's going to have to be a two-part epoxy, sort of like a tabletop pour. So that's, I think, the direction I'll go in if I decide I want to fill it in. I haven't completely decided if that's what I'm going to do. But the surrounding surface is going to be done to look like a brushed metal. And I've got a cool technique for doing that. We'll see how that works out. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. And what this illustrates is something I have said numerous times in the past. Test and experiment before you commit to the final piece. And if you read a lot of the comments that come into videos that I've produced in the past where I talk about finishing, you'll notice a lot of times my response is test on scrap. It is so important to do, especially if you're doing something that's completely out of the ordinary. It's also important if you're doing something that is a technique that other folks have used, because you never know how it's going to work on these specific wood that you've selected for your build. Just because it looked great on some other guy's flamed maple doesn't mean it's going to look great on your flamed maple. And you know what you see on YouTube and what you see on Instagram is oftentimes not very representative of what's actually going to happen. So if you're really inexperienced at this, or at least are not sure how a specific approach or technique is going to look, you've got to try it out. And you know, with carving stuff on CNC machine, I rarely actually have to do testing. I've got a pretty good idea of what my feed and speeds need to be and what the bit sizes and the type of bits I need to use to get the results that I want. But every so often I'll have this idea for something like this where I'm not totally sure. So I'm definitely a big supporter of testing and experimenting. So with that said, I'm going to sign off for now. And I hope to see you in the next few episodes as I start to build this cool looking new guitar, and we'll see how it turns out. But hopefully you'll find this to be maybe a little bit educational, maybe a little bit inspirational, you know, all that kind of good stuff. That's what I always strive for. So until the next episode, take care. We'll see you soon.